Good morning and welcome to our OneClick S4HANA webinar. My name is Jean-Marc Pistoni. I'm responsible for the US for Data Migration International, and I will be your host today and will guide you through the session JiVS IMP OneClick to S4HANA. To ensure a smooth presentation, I will actually collect the questions and then address them at the end of the seminar whenever we have some time left, or I would just follow up with you personally and answer all the questions that you had turned in. With that, let's jump right into it. At the core of everything we do is the separation of historical data from operational data, but not only that, also the separation of data from the application layer, with all the benefits that come with that. Certainly a substantial reduction of IT operational cost, lower cost when it comes to data migration itself, but at the same time being able to be, and that's key, 100% compliant and having access to 100% of the data. Looking at our history, we started 25 years ago, back whenever the big movement SAP R2 to R3 took place. Back then, one of our customers asked our founder, Thomas Feiler, to develop a solution where they didn't have to migrate all the data into R3, but still gave them the possibility to access historical data without having to keep R2 alive. And back then we achieved that based on a very simple web interface that we developed. And that's really how JiVS IMP got started, and that evolved into that product JiVS IMP as we know it today. Looking at our customer base, worldwide customer base in all industries. Our solution is not industry specific and doesn't have to be industry specific. We have over 2,000 implementations worldwide, and looking at our partner network, we work with all the major even SAP partners when it comes to implementation, and from a technology perspective, we are agnostic as well. Means also you will see that you can deploy JiVS IMP on-premise or in the cloud hyperscaler of your choice. Analysts speak highly of us, but even more rewarding is to get our customers' feedback, which is great, and we can always arrange for a reference call. I mentioned that a substantial reduction of IT operational cost in the beginning, and how do we do that? At the end of the day, it's not just about the cost, which is of course key, but we also substantially reduce the data ballast once you choose to take that step towards JiVS IMP. Substantial cost reduction comes also by reducing complexity when it comes to projects, maybe transformation projects, but at the same time, we want to make sure that you gain agility, you gain the possibility to be compliant with current security guidelines and requirements, and be at the same time 100% compliant. Looking at our product and what our product offers, JiVS IMP is truly an integrated management platform when it comes to data and transformation. We have in our use cases application, the classic application retirement. Historization is a terminology that is being used quite often. Archival is something that is being used, but then also right sizing, maybe the right sizing of an operational database that got too big, maybe related to certain performance issues that you might be facing. That's when JiVS IMP comes into place as well. And then of course in mergers and acquisition scenarios, carve in, carve out scenarios, scenarios of specific data sets that have to be handed over to a buyer, or the buyer is in the lead and is storing data after the handover took place. And then, of course, our use cases when it comes to SAP S4 transformation. Looking at that journey and what the challenges are when it comes to transformation to SAP S4HANA, there's certainly a lack of resources at the end of the day. There's a magnitude of possibilities when it comes to choosing the right approach. And that's certainly part of the challenge that our customers are facing today. And that's exactly where we come in. These developments and that wave of SAP S4HANA transformations, the requirement for skilled resources asks for a smart approach, a transparent approach, and that's our OneClick approach that I will be presenting to you. Looking at the more traditional approaches, we are part of the SAP S4 Move program today. A lot of people know that program, RISE, that SAP put in place. And here we see and support still those different approaches that most of our customers try to contemplate about which would be the right approach to take. One of them certainly being a selective data transition, then a SAP conversion. A lot of people spoke about greenfield approach or brownfield approach, and any other color that is out there in the market. JiVS IMP still supports and is being used for all those approaches. And in addition to these maybe a little more traditional approaches, we came up with a truly unique offering and approach, a solution at the end of the day for our customers, which we call OneClick solution. Our OneClick solution, at the core of our OneClick solution is that we say early on, we are making sure that the customer has transparency and has a foundation for decision making. Which approach would be right for me? Is it brown? Is it green? At the end of the day, it shouldn't matter. It should be customer specific. The issue that our customers are facing are certainly that there are a lot of different possibilities and they don't have enough information about their existing environments. No matter if we are talking about an existing SAP environment or maybe other systems that they plan to move in the future into SAP S4 as well. And as you will see, JiVS IMP will help with this as well. Looking at the individual steps here on the next few slides, how the OneClick approach works, this is the data reduction potential analysis. And that's the part where I said earlier, the customer is looking for transparency. The customer needs a foundation for decision making when it comes to the approach. And this cockpit, this dashboard that you see here is really at the core of that. It helps you understand and read the data as it is today before you decide which color approach you might want to take, or if it wouldn't be smarter to simply take our OneClick approach instead. Looking at the high-level process with JiVS IMP for migration projects, this is an overview of every single step. And I will guide you through those individual steps, from getting and loading the source data into JiVS to creating business objects, then what we call the analyze, identify, and design phase, over to the structure and value mapping that is key in a transformation project, data quality and data enrichment capabilities, data consistency checks, and then the last step, load to the actual target system. I will also be addressing towards the end of the seminar historical data. This is something that in many cases gets forgotten, and it should be addressed before you start a transformation to S4. What should we do with the historical data? Where will this historical data remain? I will address that as well. Step number one, data load from any kind of source system. Here, certainly some of the key features that I listed for you is the actual connection to the source system that our product supplies, transfer of the data from that source system into JiVS IMP, including a completeness report, which is really important also from a legal and compliance perspective. This completeness report, by the way, can be audited by an auditor of your choice. In many cases, it might be internal application owner or a legal department that gets involved at this stage. But you have that as a standard deliverable, a standard functionality that JiVS IMP offers, is that completeness report. As a result, of course, you can already work with certain export filter settings at this point. However, what we see is that most customers, as a first step, they move 100% of the data into JiVS IMP and work from there. When it comes to transferring data, all tables, including Z and Y range tables, T codes that you might know from the SAP world, that's certainly easy for JiVS IMP to transfer and to handle. The data extraction, as you will see later. For that, we are using a certified SAP plugin, which also allows us to successfully move, for example, SAP ADK files and make them transparent at the same time, so you can work with the data contained in within those SAP ADK files, just as you would transfer any other data set. Step number two, configuring the business objects. The title says it. It's of course possible to have one business object for multiple use cases. We have over 3,000 predefined business objects available for SAP and also for non-SAP systems. And that already brings us to step number three, analyze, identify, and design data on an organizational level. For example, here, you get an immediate overview as a result about key figures. And I took an example of, in this case, OpenSD sales orders within a organization. What you can do within this step three is also drill down and then design the relevant reduction rules, even on an object level. And as you can see here, as an example, not closed SD orders, for example, within an organization, or you filter further down and say, well, not older than 5 years. In addition to that, you could add additional filter criteria and say, well, we only want SD orders that are not closed, not older than 5 years, and bigger than an amount of 1,000. So a lot of capabilities and possibilities when it comes to filtering and reducing the data that you plan to move into S4. And again, address that early on without having to go through too many pre-workshops in trying to clarify which data should be kept or not. Looking at step number 4, structure and value mapping. Here, standard capability SAP ECC to S4HANA, also Oracle EBS to S4, and Navision to S4, and we do have other structure mappings ready for you, ready to go for you. And you can, of course, when it comes to value mapping, always work with rules based on field level, or do a mapping on domain level. Step number 5 would already be the cleansing, maybe a data enrichment. There are several use cases. A really important one is certainly the golden record. Identify duplicates on a master data level. Maybe identify empty or wrong formatted fields and correct them, create correction rules, which is really important, so you don't have to necessarily do that for every field. Step number 6 in this process would already be related to data consistency. So JiVS helps you here as well. If you and just looking at the user interface that we offer, very easy to use as well, extremely transparent to use. So this very important step during the process of migrating to S4HANA. Step number 7, exporting of the data to the actual target structure. Here again, as you can see, you can work with the design filter rules, blacklist, whitelist, you name it. And you have, of course, also other options. When looking at the third-party transformation tools, of course, JiVS IMP, the JiVS IMP ETL will support that as well. This just a highly recommended lecture that our founder actually was involved in, the E3 magazine. I highly recommend that if you are right now planning and thinking and planning along the S4HANA journey. I mentioned earlier that application retirement, actually the historical data very often gets forgotten. And this is something I would like to address. We believe that this is very important when it comes to the S4HANA transformation journey, is to address historical data early on. And there are a lot of options on the table at the end of the day. Lift and shift to the cloud, dumps to the into a data lake, or to do nothing. I mean, to do nothing really shouldn't be an option today. And looking at dump into a data lake, in most cases, this step will simply not be compliant with guidelines such as GDPR, where you have to be able to delete individual records, maybe based on the right to be forgotten, CCPA in the US, which goes into the direction of GDPR. And the lift and shift to the cloud is not a solution as well. At the end of the day, you would just be moving a silo into a different spot. And this is where JiVS comes in as well for SAP applications as well as non-SAP applications with a proven methodology. I believe the best people on board. We are extremely privileged when it comes to know-how that we internally, but also our partners have when it comes to implementing those projects. Simple four-step project process. You extract the data from the legacy system. You get a completeness report. You configure data access at that point. We have over 3,000 business objects available, similar to canned reports that you can immediately deploy. End user can immediately access data without having to understand an application in detail. He gets the reports as he knew them before. In the case of SAP, maybe based on transaction codes and so forth. And then you can, of course, work on access and retention rules. JiVS IMP offers tax and legal hold, for example, as a standard functionality, purging, deleting, all these things are standard functionalities, and it can also be used for data lifecycle management at the end of the day. And again, of course, you can even there, you could put a tax and legal hold in place, but still continue to delete and purging around a potentially set tax and legal hold. Accessing historical data after that. If you have different legacy systems that you retired, you will have always the same interface to access that historical data. We believe that is key. The interface can be customized and give it the look and feel of certain applications. But what we generally see, customers that retire a lot of different applications, they like the fact that the user interface always looks the same, and an end user training, in our case, usually doesn't take more than 2 hours to use JiVS IMP and to access historical data. And then we have different possibilities when it comes to accessing it. Important is that, and this is an example of a FI document. As you can see, you can store structured as well as unstructured data within JiVS IMP. That is a key requirement that we get from our customers. And JiVS IMP becomes almost a single source of truth when it comes to historical data. It even gives you the capability and the possibility to search across multiple different retired systems to create a hit list of that. So JiVS allows a almost Google-like search along those retired historical systems. And in the case of SAP, you have 2 options. You can access historical data as shown earlier based on the JiVS IMP user interface, or you can access historical data based on the SAP GUI. So for the end user, nothing changes. They really can use the S4 GUI. They access historical data that is sitting within JiVS IMP without really knowing that they leave the SAP environment. Important, again, is that our OneClick approach offers an approach that shows early transparency when it comes to creating a foundation for the decision which approach should be taken. We believe that the OneClick approach is a much more simplified approach. It doesn't force you to choose a color. It gives you that transparency. It gives you an overview of what kind of data you have and what kind of data you have to address or not to address. With what data can you look at and say, hey, this is historical data that is from an operational perspective, from a business perspective, not relevant anymore. A second note towards the end of this presentation, again, is related to historical data. Our approach guarantees that you will have a substantial cut in operational cost, since you don't have to keep those legacy systems around, and you still are 100% compliant. You have access to 100% of that historical data in a structured and absolutely compliant way. With that, I'm already at the end of the webinar. I would like to thank you for joining me today. I have received quite a bit of questions, and thank you so much for that. Due to the timeline, I will follow up with you personally per email, and I'm looking forward to answer those questions and continue the discussion related to a smart one-click approach to S4HANA. Thank you very much. I hope you all have a good day.